what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Today we're talking about caregiver resilience. We'll discover what's happening in our brains and nervous system during stress, and how that plays out in interactions with others, and how to meet those stressful situations with compassion and skill.
I used to think healthcare was all the same until I discovered Pace at home. Now I can come to a place to stay active, see the doctor, or just enjoy a meal with my friends. Plus, having a team of people that help me make sense of my options gives me the support I need to stay in charge of my own health. It's been life-changing.
With Pace at Home, we offer a unique lineup of personalized care and a caring staff that feels like family, all under one roof. Call today and discover a community of caring delivered at your own pace.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karen Summey, Project Manager for ACAP Community and an active family caregiver. If you're listening to our live broadcast, today is Friday, June 6, 2025 at 12 noon Eastern Time. Both my guest and I are live in the chat panel as you watch the show we recorded for you this week. We're standing by ready to take your questions and comments during the broadcast. To join in the discussion, simply sign into your own YouTube or Google account to access the chat panel in YouTube. If you're listening to our replay, you can also sign in and leave comments below your video screen, and we'll get back to you very soon. Today's guest is Christy Shy Day. Christy is a trauma-informed consultant, facilitator, and strategist with over 20 years of experience helping individuals, organizations, and communities navigate complexity and build resilience. Drawing on the work of Dan Siegel, Thomas Hubel, and others, she brings practical neuroscience to life, sharing tools that support emotional regulation, attunement, and healing. Whether in disaster zones or family care conversations, Christy empowers people to stay present, grounded, and connected, even under pressure. Welcome to First Fridays with ACAP, Christy. We're very happy you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Good. We're going to have a great discussion today. Our topic today is really fascinating. As an active caregiver myself, I know how difficult it can be to stay strong when caregiving gets stressful. Mm-hmm. We're talking today about caregiver resilience, which everyone truly needs, and I'd like to start out with a quick definition of what that means. One definition I've seen is that resilience is the ability to bounce back from difficult situations, from stress or setbacks, and to keep moving forward even when things are tough. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that definition, and is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, that's a pretty common definition, but there's a little bit of nuance that I might add to that, which is that it's the ability, resilience is the ability to stay present in difficult times without compromising from our future state. So wonderful. How do we get comfortable being uncomfortable in situations without checking out? How do we stay present?
Great. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have a truly distinctive background working with individuals and organizations and communities to navigate complexity and to help build resilience. And there's a lot of science behind that, and neuroscience especially. Mm-hmm. Let's start out by talking a little bit about what's going on inside the body when we're under extreme stress. And we want to relate that to the caregiving experience. So can you help us understand how our brain responds to moments of stress?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to use my hand to kind of represent a brain. And this is a model that Dan Siegel talks about. So if we pretend this is the brain, this is the front part of the brain, and this is our brain stem coming down. This front part of the brain here, our prefrontal cortex, it is responsible for thinking and being able to use words, for example, and understand words. Inside of that, the palm, if we were to open up our brain, inside of our brain in the center is our emotional receptors. And this is where we process emotion. It's also where we have memory. And then the stem here is the part that processes all and controls all the automatic parts of our body, our heart rate, our breathing, our survival instincts. And then inside, wrapped up inside our brain here, if I use my thumb, is what's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is like a smoke detector for sensing danger. And what happens when we are in a situation where things get stressful is the amygdala goes, oh, there's a potential danger, there's danger, 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 and it's going off. And our prefrontal cortex, our thinking part of our brain, goes offline. And we call that flipping our lid. Like we flip the lid. And when our lid is flipped, because we can't access cognition easily, we can't access verbal cues, we need a different way to bring that part of the brain down online. And what we often see when we flip the lid is emotion, right? The emotional stuff's coming out, but we're not actually able to process. And so this part of the brain, the survival part of the brain, needs to understand that it's safe, and that's what allows us to bring the lid back down or be able to access our thinking. So the challenge is that this part of the brain really doesn't respond to language. It doesn't respond to language. It responds to sensation. And so this is why, like a hug, for example, from someone when you're feeling stressed, or drinking a sip of water where you are activating these automatic parts of the body, are what start to bring the stress response down and allow our brain to come back online.
Is that the same as when somebody says, okay, stop and take a breath, or count to 10, or something like that?
Yes, and I'm taking a sip right now because I can tell that my nervous system is activated. And so I'm trying to send a signal that, like, even though I'm on a podcast and I feel a little nervous, I'm safe. And so I'm giving myself a chance to breathe and to think about that. But yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's like tapping into parts of our body that would not normally be accessible to us in a real fight or flight situation. If I was fleeing from a tiger on the savannah, I'm not going to stop to take a sip of water.
Right.
I'm not going to stop to like catch my breath. I'm going to keep going, and it's going to be an automatic thing.
Right.
So, one of the things that I think is important to remember is that this happens without control. I mean, I can sit here and prep myself and tell myself to be calm, and I can do my stretches and meditation, whatever I need to do to be present, but my heart rate might go up on its own automatically. And so being able to recognize when that happens, being able to catch it, is a real important first step to being able to for resilience, to be able to come back into my body and go, oh, right, and then catch it, come back down off of that, bring my brain back offline. And so, if we can start to catch it when it's starting to go offline, we're able to use our thinking before it disappears and actually bring it back down.
That's great. So there is really a purpose for somebody taking a pause, taking a sip of water, taking a breath, counting to 10 or whatever, and that is scientific. That's so very interesting. I have not understood that previously. Well, you work with people in a lot of high-stress environments. So what patterns do you see, and what starts to shift when people understand what their nervous system is doing?
Well, so the first thing I want to just say is that our brains are going to go offline. And so the question is, like, how fast can you get back? That's what my mentor, Forrest Toms, would say. It's not whether you're going to go offline or not. You will go offline. But how fast can you get back? And so one of the things that I've seen is that as people start to understand how these techniques work, especially if we're in groups where you're working with someone else, when both people start to understand that, then there's a way to discharge or catch things before they escalate. Now, the patterns of our nervous system are going to end up being pretty standard. Like, the first thing we try to do under stress is we try to connect. We're either trying to connect with our bodies or we're trying to connect with another person. We saw a lot of this in Western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene, where people were wanting to go connect with someone else. Who do I talk to? How do I connect with my neighbors? But if you can't connect, then the nervous system starts to go into what you've probably heard, the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
And there's actually more beyond the freeze. There's actually a collapse state and a submit state. And submit is where people actually just kind of are compliant, and they'll just do whatever's being told of them because they no longer have the ability to access that's their survival strategy at that point. And each of these is a survival strategy. So fight might look like if I feel threatened by someone, my loved one, for example, if they are reacting to me in a way that's different than the way I've known them my whole life, then I may try to connect with them. But if I'm not able to connect with them because of what they're going through, I may try to fight it. And fight might look like trying to change their behavior, trying to change the circumstance, trying to go, let's just go get this other person, get this other solution involved. Mm-hmm. Or I might try to flee it. I might try to I cannot hear it. Or I might just go blank and just not know what to do at all. And so, being able to recognize when these states happen allows us to start being able to, I might have a nervous system thing going on, which then goes, maybe I need to go do some sort of a reset. I need to bring my nervous system back.
I could see where people would identify this very readily when they are caring for a person with dementia, and they have a hard time connecting with them because that person's brain is not, as it used to be, and it's more difficult to connect then with the person who has dementia. So that is very interesting. So it's, I think you're saying that it's important to recognize what stage you're in when you're in the midst of these stressful situations.
Absolutely. And being able to recognize in your loved one what they're going through. So dementia obviously is one category where it would be very triggering to the caregiver because it's a different interaction. But if you're dealing with, like I had a conversation with my parents about aging, and my mom's response was to go into it was a kind of a combination of a fight and a flight and a freeze all at once, where she started quoting scripture and everything will be fine and I don't need to worry about anything. And she couldn't engage in a cognitive conversation. She went into and what am I going to do kind of thing, but it was overwhelming for her system. And so that gives me a clue that like her system is overwhelmed. So because co-regulation, so our nervous systems they feed off each other. So if I am able to bring my energy down or bring my groundedness, if I'm able to like lean into this sense of safety, and I can genuinely feel that in my own body, that's going to communicate to the other nervous system in the room. Right. And so that was what, that's the connection, right? Is like figuring out how to connect. And so if I understand someone else's nervous system state, if I learn to recognize and see what it is, then I can start to get connected to where they are, and I can start to like bring it down.
And I'm very interested in those connections because as a caregiver myself, I have people in my family who have serious health issues, and they have a big impact on their emotional states and what's going on with them. Right. And I'm not sure I have done the best job of recognizing the state that they're in, because I want to plow ahead and offer suggestions or talk or do whatever. And I'm not sure that's always the best response, because I really probably ought to be paying better attention to what state they're in and adjust my choices.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an inside out and outside in. It's constantly going back and forth. And one of the things I would wonder in that situation is, is the need to push forward actually a fight response in yourself to seeing your parents in pain. Right? Like that's really hard. And there's also there's a power shift going on too, right? Like it's just innate that as people are aging, then they're having to be more dependent on other people. There's a power shift. And so you're having to navigate that.
That is very tough.
And the emotions that go with that are all there. So being able to recognize like, oh, okay, I'm pushing through, especially if you sense resistance, if you sense this kind of mismatch, it's like, oh, I might be pushing through. And it could be their state, it could be your state, and it could be because we co-regulate that those things are playing off each other. And that becomes an intervention point.
Right. Wow. This is so great. So let's talk about that. In these moments where there might be a mismatch or something's going on, how do you reset that situation or just get your footing again and, stay in tune with what's going on?
I love that you said footing.
Okay.
I mean, that's such a great, how do we get grounded? How do we get our footing, right? It's like, how do I get stable? How do I find that sense of like connected wholeness? Because it's that overwhelm. We get kind of scattered. We shut off. We're not even aware sometimes of our own bodies. They check out. And so remember back to our hand brain. So if our brain is offline, if our words are offline, words are not really going to help all that much for ourselves or for someone else. And so sensing is really the thing. So you mentioned, take a breath, for example, and that's great. But I want to really add the piece that really makes that work is the sensing of the breath. So it's not take a breath from a thinking perspective. I'm going to think my way into taking a breath. It's I want to feel myself taking a breath.
Okay.
I want to sense it. I want to take a sip of water. I don't just want to drink it and like override the sensation. I want to actually see how far I can feel it. Going down. I want to notice the temperature. So one way you can really subtly do this with someone who is slightly overwhelmed, if you start noticing, is you can actually ask questions like, you hand them the water, and instead of being preachy to them in a moment, because, parents may not always listen to their children. It could be something like, is the temperature of that water okay? Does that water taste different to you? Do you taste something in that water? I feel like I taste something in that. Do you taste something in that? So you're drawing the attention of the other nervous system towards sensation. So, for example, I brought my little scent thing here, so I'll hand this to you.
Okay.
So go ahead and just give a smell to that. Now, when you're doing that, there's a couple of things going on. Because you're attending to the smell, you're actually sending a signal of like, oh, I'm paying attention to something in my environment. And so that is sending a signal to your brain. So it doesn't matter whether the smell is, we would like the smell to be pleasant and not off-putting, right? But that's another one you can do. Hey, Mom, does this candle, what do you think about this scent? Does this remind you? I can't remember what flower this reminds me of. What does this remind you of? These are subtle ways in which you can encourage people to sense in noticing the detail on the leaf of a flower or a plant. And every time, what's interesting is that every time we do these, they can be used in a moment to help bring our brain back line. But let's say our brain is just kind of operating under just an ongoing level of stress because of aging and illness and life. And our brain it's like in this space where it's not really flipped. The lid hasn't flipped, but it's under stress. Every time we lean in, it gives us a chance to bring that back. So by doing this over time, the more we stretch it, there is neuroplasticity in our brain. We build these pathways of safety that can help to counteract those feelings of not being safe when our body doesn't feel like it used to feel, when the way in which I live is having to change and it feels scary. These little micro doses of, hey, does it feel this rock feels really good. Like, wow, that's so smooth. And I love the colors on it. It's just really great.
I have one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
do.
And the key is to do it mindfully, because it's the sending of that, it's that focusing of the attention of the nervous system on something that is pleasant and stable, or at least neutral and stable.
And so show us with our hand model when we're using the stone or we're smelling the scent, what's happening in the brain.
So our brain may be fully offline, or like it was for me at the doctor's office this week when I had this and was really focusing on it. Or our brain might be just slightly offline. And so what happens is every time we send signals of safety to this part of the brain, it allows our thinking brain to come back online.
So that's the purpose of the stone or the scent or the water or whatever.
Yep. These resets allow us to bring our brain back online. And I highly recommend a group called Resources for Resilience. They're based out of Asheville, North Carolina. They have an excellent curriculum, and often you can access their classes online. Just really good strategies for the different types of what they would call rapid resets. I've learned a lot from their work. One thing I will say is that you want to try to do your sensing for like 20 or more seconds, because it takes a little while for the nervous system to feel it.
Good tip.
That's why hugs are actually, like, if you've grounded yourself and you feel like you're solid in your body and you're not kind of floating away, you're not caught up in your thoughts, you're actually like present, giving a hug to someone and holding it for 20 seconds, you will feel their nervous system start to shift if you bring groundedness into it. And you don't have to hug people. You can also do it by like putting a hand, like the shins and this part of I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but the ankle, the front part of the ankle is another place that's highly receptive, because of the way the nerves work in the body. It's highly receptive to taking grounded energy in. So, like when my grandmother was in the hospital, we would spend time. First, you got to get yourself grounded, like feel your feet, make sure you're present and solid in your body, and you're not having an emotional response, because you don't want to transmit that to another nervous system. Make sure you're feeling grounded. And when you do, then you can put your hands gently on someone's shins or their ankle, and you can help to bring calm into their nervous system that way, sort of like a quick entry point.
Yeah, I'm recognizing some of these things when we study meditative states or any form of meditation, where you're just closing your eyes and trying to relax and experiencing each part of your body. Just be cognizant of your foot or your shin or your arm or whatever the case may be. So these sound familiar in a way.
Yeah.
For that purpose.
And I will say too that, everybody's nervous system is different, and we've all had different experiences. And so for some people, being in their body feels very difficult to access. I mean, I had some trauma when I was in the womb that has shaped how my information. So my body has not felt very safe. And that may be true for other people as well that are listening. And so it may not feel safe for you to be able to meditate or to be able to find part of your body. And so what I would encourage is take these little pieces, because from my own experience, I've been able to see as I practice the little pieces, like whatever is in my range of tolerance, when I practice the little piece, okay, I can do that one piece and that's fine. I do this one piece and that's fine. Over time, it builds and you can do more and more. And so, I'm astonished that I'm a person saying, yeah, meditation's great, because that was for years completely inaccessible to me. So I would just say for anybody, there's a whole range of capacity and a range. And so the key here is to be with what is possible. Like one little piece is great. Don't push through the, Don't if you're pushing and feeling like it's taking courage, then you're taking something from the future. That's not resilience. So, don't push.
Right. Okay. Well, we could literally talk about this all day, and I'm just fascinated by what you're saying. But let's talk about when people, and us included, sometimes we or other people have a tendency to just shut down or we overreact. So what's going on in those moments, and how can we meet that with more compassion, especially as caregivers?
Yeah. Well, like I said before, this nervous system state, like a shutdown, is a natural nervous system protective response, and an overreaction, what I would have heard called, and what I refer to as a disproportionate reaction to something, is usually a signal that the nervous system is overwhelmed. And Dan Siegel, the neuroscientist behind the hand-brain model, he says to name it is to tame it. So if I can recognize that that's what's going on, that's a good start. But there's another person who has built on the work of Dan Siegel. His name is Thomas Hubel, and he talks about this idea of the defense mechanism and blessing a defense mechanism. So we often think of defense mechanisms as being sort of a psychological thing, but they're actually a physiological thing. Like the nervous system is telling us to fight or fly or flee or shut down. It's telling us to do that because it can't process whatever it is that's happening right now. Right. And so in order to keep us alive in its mind, it's a pretty sophisticated yet simplistic in some ways mechanism. It starts to shut us down. So defense mechanisms can take all forms. So it could be something that's as obvious as just a shutdown, like I'm not even going to talk about it, or a yelling kind of thing. But it could also be in ourselves. It could be guilt. I'm feeling guilty about something, and that becomes a defense mechanism. It's trying to protect protect me from something that feels worse than guilt. Right? Or maybe it's that I rush through a conversation or rush through to speed is usually a trauma response. Like I'm trying to I'm just going to move through the next thing. We're not going to talk about that right now, Mom. We're going to, we need to do this. Except that, in myself, what is it that's causing me to want to rush through that moment? Is it really life-threatening, or is it that there's something else in myself that I'm trying to protect? Over-intellectualizing is another piece. When we start to sense that a conversation is coming from the neck up and not from the heart or the felt sense, right, we probably have a defense mechanism involved, right? And so being able to recognize these defense mechanisms in others is just, it again allows us to start to go, oh, we can tease out, oh, there's something else going on here. This is not necessarily, this is my cue to remember to go reset, right, or to how do I meet this person where they are?
Well, just an impromptu question here. So we know now that if we're overreacting or we have this fight or flight sensation or whatever the case may be, and we know that we're pressed for time or something is critical or we have a deadline and we cannot stop, it is critical. What are we doing to our nervous system when we fail to stand down?
Yeah, so again, I'll point back to Dan Siegel's work, but there's this thing called the range of resilience, or the window of resilience. And so what happens is in a normal nervous system, we can handle a certain amount of shock and a certain amount of settling, a certain amount of shock, a certain amount of settling. And when we have a lion chase us or a deadline, right, then it's going to shoot our nervous system up out of that range of resilience. It's going to give us adrenaline. It's going to give us, extra energy to do this thing. But our nervous systems are not meant to live above that range of resilience. It's meant to be an occasional up to save us and then come back down. Okay. But so many of us in our lives are operating outside of that zone, and we're just fueling it with, adrenaline, caffeine, whatever it is we need to keep fueling it, to keep going. And at some point, what happens is, you will end up crashing at some point. But what also happens is your range of resilience starts to shrink. And so what happens is it takes less and less to throw you off. It takes less,
I
you have less room. And so that's why doing these little activities every now and then, every time you bring your brain back, you're saying, okay, I could feel you going up out of the range of resilience. I could feel you going up. We're going to come back down. Every time you do that, you're exercising the muscle, and it builds this pattern where the nervous system goes, oh, I can handle more. And so your range of resilience can actually grow. So, but it has to be tended to. And if you spend time constantly driving, it won't get there. One of the things that I've found really helpful for me is when I feel like I'm a little bit of a driven person, and I have a lot of trauma in my background. So I'm like a push, go fast, use your head. Like, I'm that kind of person, or have been. I was, until my nervous system completely collapsed, which is why I've learned a lot of this stuff. And one of the things that was helpful for me, one of my teachers, Raquel Dubois in Australia, she shared that, if you come across this line, if you come up to this line and your nervous system is saying it's going to take courage to cross that line, if you feel like you're going to be pushing, like if you can start to sense that, just take a half step off that line. Just take that breath, take that whatever. It's not that you're saying I'm not going to cross the line. It's not saying I'm not going to go do it, but you come back off the line to just what would make this feel a little bit safer? What would make this feel a little bit more comfortable? What would help me pull down this resistance, address the resistance? Because what you're doing is actually dealing with almost a defense mechanism or a pre-defense mechanism in your own system. So instead of overriding it, you engage it and you go, oh, I see you. You're telling me this might not be good for me to do. So I'm going to come back off that line. I'm going to, if I have to go look at my email today, or if I have to go, have this appointment or go have this conversation or whatever, like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And you can feel it. Okay, what do I need to resource myself so that I feel safer right now? And equip yourself with those things, and even say to yourself, it's okay, we don't need to do this.
Right.
And then see what comes up. And I've been really impressed with how much my nervous system actually comes back in and goes, okay, if you're going to give me, a popsicle after this, or whatever the thing is, or if I'm going to get to have I'm going to wear this special colored shirt because it makes me feel better, or whatever the thing is, I'm going to listen to my favorite song on the way there or whatever. If we resource ourselves, then we're able to be embodied when we meet that, and when we're able to stay in our resilient zone. And that is what keeps us from, over the long haul, burning out.
As you have been giving your response, I've been jotting some notes here because I can think of so many applications for this very thing, in the sense of the caregiving journey. We know statistically that caregivers report their health as not great. Many times, a huge percentage of caregivers will say, my health is not good.
Yep.
And a lot of that is the stress that goes with caregiving. The fact that we're being asked to do things that we're not trained to do, that are stressful, that are life-altering, many consequences beyond our actions. And so when we are overextended and we have that huge amount of stress on us, we may not be making good decisions. And furthermore, we may just continue to do that on and on because we think we have no choice in the matter.
That's right.
And in some cases, we don't. So, first of all, I would say that caring for yourself as a caregiver is like being on an airplane and the mask dropped down and you're supposed to put your oxygen mask on first and then help your child or whoever it may be to do that also. Because if you are not at your optimal state, you're not able to help someone else. So there are many programs out in communities for respite care, and I would encourage people to seek those out so that you get a break and you get to get that little bit of a breath or some other sensation for a little while so that you can come back and be re-energized to do those caregiving things. The other thing I was thinking about was people do this at work all the time. There are deadlines. There are massive projects. There's money on the line. There's everything. And as we stress and stress and stress and make that range of resilience smaller, we're not being very effective or very efficient any longer.
That's right.
And so vacations are good. You know, I was guilty. I didn't take a lot of vacation time. If I did, I took it in short little hops, and that was good. But those vacation times, those moments of rest and respite are very important for all of us. And, you know, I said a minute ago, we could talk about this all day, and we could. I am just fascinated. And, you know, when we start noticing that we're doing these things, then what does it really look like to stay with them and to be with what is going on rather than trying to avoid it or fix it?
So I'll give an example of so the phrase that I want to put in your mind is to be with what is. And again, this comes from some of the work of Thomas Hubel, and he has a book called Attuned and a podcast called The Point of Relation. And so he blends spirituality with neuroscience. So who we are from an essence and how we relate to others in the world, and then combines neuroscience with it. And so one of the examples he gives is if you could imagine a child coming to a parent in the middle of the night, oh, you know, there's monsters in my room, I'm, you know, whatever. One reaction a parent might have is to say, oh, Tommy, it's okay. There's no such thing as monsters. You're safe. Everything's fine. You know, you're good. Another reaction is to say, Tommy, get on my lap. That's really scary. It's scary to think that there's such a thing as monsters. Why don't you come, would you feel safe? Come sit with me here. And we'll face the monsters together. We'll figure it out together. There's an emotional versus cognitive response going on. So in the first example, that is a thinking brain response. That is a brain going, there's no such thing as monsters. You're fine. Everything's safe. But that response is being said to a brain that is offline and is speaking to a part of the brain that requires sensation. So this misattunement means that while the child is having to work harder because they don't necessarily feel any safer at all by what's just been said because they can't process words. So attunement is that being able to understand when someone is offline and match them with the energy that they're bringing. So if they're bringing emotional, it's not the time to bring cognitive. It's the time to bring emotional. It's the time to bring sensation, or it's the time to maybe let your nervous system help them regulate theirs. And so this calibration is, I think, is really key. And back to the defense mechanisms, you want to be with what is without trying to change it. Like, it is really hard. This is really hard. What you're saying makes sense to me. I may not agree with it. I may not like what's happening, but to be able to attune with that person can allow very interesting things to happen. And I've seen this with my own parents, and family relationships are complicated. And
yes, they are.
Yeah. And this period, everybody knows who's on this call will know this period of transition and the roles changing and all that is very, very difficult to navigate for the caregiver and for the person experiencing it. And so that being able to sense the is this a cognitive thing? Is this an emotional thing? Where are we? And to just take some of the pressure off of trying to solve it and just be with what is. Yeah, this sucks right now. This is awful.
Yes.
And letting that resonate frees up energy because it takes a lot of energy to try to suppress or come up with a disguise or another interpretation or another story or a distraction. It takes a lot of energy to be with what isn't. Right. And so when we are with what is, it allows us to start to both attune, which allows us to bring down the energy level and the overwhelm. It invites our own resources to become more accessible, and it allows more connection, which connection, as my colleague Dr. Patrick Jeff says, connection is the antidote to trauma. So if this experience is to be a wholesome, healthy experience, even if it's painful, being with what is a really vital part of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just amazed at what you're giving us and how we can help be a better caregiver from this information. And I'm going to be one of those people who goes back and watches this podcast about a half a dozen times to commit it to long-term memory because I need these techniques. I need to understand how to do these things. So I am so very grateful that you have given us this information, and it's just really enlightening. I want to thank you for coming today and for sharing everything that you have. And I think that we're going to have a lot of people who are very interested in seeing this a number of times. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
And I would just like to say as a closing piece is that it's the moments. It's in the moments. Every little piece you do is a contributing thing. It does not have to be big. And I'm not an expert. I'm a layperson who's figured out how to put these pieces together in ways that work for me. And so you can do the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And I want to thank you, our viewers and listeners. Hopefully, this look at caregiver resilience will be helpful for you in your caregiving journey. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to click the like button below your video screen. If you'd like to hear more of our broadcast, click the subscribe button as well. And please keep in mind that you can share today's podcast with family and friends by clicking the share button. We also want to say thank you to Pace at Home in Newton, North Carolina, for sponsoring all of our Caregiver Community podcasts, and to Every Age, our sustaining partner. Please join us again on Friday, July 4, for our next episode. Many of you may be on vacation celebrating our Independence Day, so just remember that you can tune in on your smartphone wherever you may be. You can view the replay of today's program through our ACAP Community website at www.acapcommunity.org, or find the audio podcast as part of the Mesh network of online shows and podcasts. You'll find us on any platform where you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website. While you're on our site, we hope you'll take a few minutes to learn more about ACAP, our free educational programs for caregivers, and our local community chapters offering in-person programs. Until next time, be well. Bye for now.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.